Welcome to our official album review for Benny the Butcher's new album, Everybody Can't Go. 12 songs, Benny's first album in 2 years, so you better believe we had to review this one, and we're going to be going through every single category as per usual, such as artist performance, content, features, production, replay value, and more. But before we actually get into it, guys, make sure that you hit that subscribe button to never miss another NFR review again. But Ant, let's get into this because very anticipated album for both of us. Benny the Butcher is definitely part of an elite level of hip-hop artists. So what are your expectations and were they met, especially for the artist performance?
Yeah, so let's get into the artist performance. I feel like once you start to really analyze what Benny's doing on this album, kind of how I was talking to you about it right before this recording, I feel like it's not similar to Burden of Proof, but it's almost there for me, where you see Benny kind of using his traditional flows, also trying out new ones, but kind of getting very personal and relatable with a lot of his different deliveries and cadences, really trying to make you feel the weight of his words, also trying out new flows. For example, I believe it was on Big Dog. No, it wasn't on Big Dog. It was on Braun, where he was using the on flow, for example. So there were certain instances on this album where I tried to see him like sort of change it up. And to be honest with you, like, it's not revolutionary for Benny the Butcher, you know, and that's not what I was expecting from Benny at this point in his career. He's dropped multiple studio albums, he's developed his style, and I feel like there's only maybe a certain amount he could go for. The only thing with me, though, is that up to Benny the Butcher standards, I really enjoyed this artist performance as a whole throughout the track list.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the thing I was happiest about was that going into this, we knew that this was his big Def Jam debut, and I'm really happy that as you go throughout the entire track list, he never really seems to want to, you know, bring in a trendy or mainstream sound. He really stuck to his artistic identity until you get to Big Timers, where on Big Timers, which was the outro track, he did try something new, and he tried to do some singing, and he simply doesn't have the voice for it. So that was a performance I could say I didn't enjoy all that much. But going back to Braun, which you spoke about, that's easily one of his best performances. It's brimming with confidence, and he brings in that new stop and go flow. And like you mentioned, he uses the rhyme scheme where every end rhyme ends with Braun, and he keeps that going for all three verses, which was really impressive. How did you feel about Jermanie's Graduation, which was the intro? Because personally, I felt like there was a bit of like instances where you heard these awkward pauses with his flow that make him sound like he's catching up to the beat.
No way.
That's what I heard.
Absolutely no way, Lou. That verse is one of the best on the entire album, especially that performance. So convicting, in his bag. That classic Tana Talk sort of Benny the Butcher that I absolutely love. And honestly, I didn't find him trying to catch up to his flows on this. I went through that entire verse, and even on the intro, like, I have no idea where you're trying to get that of. Just for me, I didn't hear it, but that's one of my favorite performances on the entire album, if I'm being honest with you.
It's a standout song, but the flow was a bit off to me, personally.
Listen, not for me. Another,
go for it.
Track number 5, so TMVTL. So this was a big standout for me because you're getting 3 verses from Benny the Butcher, and I really want to talk about this song more on the content matter side of things. One of the best songs Benny the Butcher has released probably this decade.
It's the best song on the album.
It is hands down the best song on the album, but you're getting that classic Tana Talk feel from Benny, where like he's giving you these sort of street stories. And as I said, I'm gonna get more into it once we get into the content. But that type of conviction and that type of aggressiveness, his ability to convince you about certain stories is so prominent within a track like this. So that's why I really enjoyed it. One song that I actually had grow on me, I'm not gonna lie to you, was Big Dog. Okay, because it's not that it grew on me as a whole, and I'm gonna talk about the Wayne feature in the feature section. But for his part, honestly, like that quick aggressive Benny flow that you saw on something like a Tana Talk 4, for example, was prominent here. He locked in. There was no break in his flow. Matched the beat perfectly, and that's what I expect from Benny the Butcher as a rapper, is to be able to handle these types of productions with care, just absolutely slice and dice through everything he's given.
I think that I think you value the artist performance a bit higher than I do when it comes to this album, but I did like his performance on Big Dog, but I feel like the hook wasn't executed properly. It just felt like he was stretching out the words a bit too much. So that wasn't really a highlight for me per se. What I did like was on 1 Foot In, where he brings in this assertive tone, brings in some punchlines and metaphors, and he also did really well on Back Again, where he tests out a quicker flow, which I thought was really refreshing. But overall, I think that across all 12 tracks, he brings in his usual dominant track presence, which is really enjoyable, handles a lot of the hooks for better or worse at certain times. And I think the experiments that he does try vocally don't always work out, but overall, solid artist performance. I'm going to give it a good rating.
I'm going to give it a great rating. Artist performance was great on my end, but let's get into the content matter. So what could you guys expect from the content matter as far as this album goes? I mean, you're gonna see the aggressive drug lingo. You're gonna hear him talk about relationships with his family. You're gonna talk, he's gonna talk about his current stature in the rap game. You're gonna hear him talk about how he left, the street life behind and how he kind of went into a cleaner business and how he was able to flip his money and how he was able to create a new, fame and fortune for himself. So I mean, like, when you look at that and you compare it to Burden of Proof, it's kind of topically on the same level, sort of like the different types of topics that he attacked for the most part, as far as like a general outline and concept of the album.
I personally found Burden of Proof a bit more personal because that album saw him really go into like the battle scars and the pain of losing his brother, and that was kind of a big theme. Here, I think thematically he is on point though, regardless, even though it is a bit different as he's sort of focusing more on like the hurdles he's facing as he's ascending in the rap game. That's something that you see on a lot of tracks on here. We do have to talk about TMVTL because it's a storytelling gem. It's exactly
more
what we
valuable
wanted.
than love.
Just like that initial story where you have Jasmine and Prince who are working together to smuggle drugs into the prison.
Yeah, but don't spoil anything.
I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just kind of giving the context. Yeah. And then the third verse sees Benny tell a really cold and dark tale about his own life.
But
and that gives you chills.
Yes, but it's interesting because the way that he does it is like he includes one bar within that verse that makes you understand everything, if you get what I'm trying to say. And that's at the beginning. You guys have to use Genius for it. You guys have to read through it. Even the second verse was absolutely impeccable as well. So if you guys want to go through that, that is the type of highlights that I'm looking for. Not only that, but you go through Jermanie's graduation, talking about his mother and the types of addictions that she had to struggle with, and, him understanding both sides of drugs, from, let's say, the consumer standpoint and from the addiction standpoint, and also from someone that sells drugs and is in that street life. Then even on something everybody can't go, talking about like, telling his daughter that you could go to any college you want to at this point. I've established everything, but don't go to college because it doesn't mean fuck all. So I like that type of family lingo, and it shows a maturity within like Benny the Butcher's writing, and that brings a unique experience to the soundscape.
I really enjoyed the content on that song, but then like he randomly throws in like a prediction for like the presidential election. I'm like, well, this is so out of place.
Yeah,
so
it was kind of maybe a bit of a filler bar.
You do catch a couple of mediocre mid bars throughout the album. I'm not going to mention all of them. One of them that I was looking at was I ate the pussy up, got my little beard growing. Just some really off the chart kind of bars at times, which was a bit unusual from a Benny album for me. But there's definitely a lot of highlights. Example, how to rap. I really like the concept for that song because he's really giving you tips for upcoming rappers about how to make it in the game, how to stay true to your artistic integrity, etc. How to know your worth when it comes to record label meetings and whatnot. So that was refreshing to hear.
I picked up on a cool quotable actually on Back Again. Money in a suitcase like Deal or No Deal. I was good with no deal. Told you I did wholesale. So you still get those classic sort of Benny bars where he's taking the coke lingo and he's putting them into cultural references, which I really like as well. Also, going back to Jermanie's graduation, you actually hear him reference something from One Way Flight, which I really liked. 7-year run, 3 away from that 10 that I promised y'all on One Way Flight. Brick Roarer. Then a Monday night.
And then he continues it with I always been the bigger fish, y'all skinny pimps like Money Mike, which could be a diss towards Freddie Gibbs, possibly, because One Way Flight was a song that Freddie was also featured on. So it was interesting to see him start off the album.
It's just that, like, I've given praise for Drake for these types of bars and calling his own success in the future. So I got to do the same thing for Benny here and just tell him, like, congratulations on the career. And I love these types of bars. So there was definitely a lot of maturity. And as I said, like, not that it's predictable, but you can kind of understand what you're going to get out of a Benny the Butcher album in 2024. As far as content matter goes.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, there was a bit of a lack of quotables or, the usual fire punchlines you can expect from Benny. I felt like in that department it was lacking a little bit, but like you were saying, lyrically, the personal stories that he's sharing, just letting us know where he's at in his life and within the rap game, that was really nice to hear.
And no filler verses.
Not really, no.
There was no filler verses throughout the entire album. So therefore, I'm gonna give the content a great rating.
I'm gonna give it a great rating as well. I was stuck between good and great, but ultimately, I think it was a job well done for sure.
All right, let's go into the features, man, because there's a massive feature list, and the first one that we ended up getting was Lil Wayne on Big Dog. All right, and he has the second verse on here. And at first, I didn't necessarily enjoy the feature too much because it's like Wayne's flow and delivery is too slow and slurred for the actual production itself, and it kind of just doesn't match
I
it.
disagree. I feel like it does match the beat.
So how does this match the beat? And then after that, the other Benny verse doesn't match it on Jermanie's graduation.
I don't know. I feel like he actually had a speedier type of flow to me. That's what it sounded like to me. And honestly, I like the fact that he took the concept literal about being a big dog and like personifies himself as a dog. And
Even
has,
the KD line was cool too.
even like the line, your female dog suck my cocker spaniel, like just really like, sort of out there Wayne punchlines that are always fun to hear. So yeah, that was really a standout feature for me. Kyle Banks on the hook of Everybody Can Go was pretty standard.
That was cool.
It was a decently sung performance.
How about Snoop Dogg on Back Again?
I mean, I wanted to hear a verse. You got that outro, you got a bridge, you got the hook. It was cool.
I liked it.
It was standard Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, it was standard Snoop. I feel like it added like a bit of branding to the album itself.
Let's talk about Stove God Cooks, who spazzed on 1 Foot In. Love the performance. Threw in some fun ad libs. Dropped some clever setup rhymes as well. Like, he's always gonna do his thing.
The price going up, better believe it, he said. That's the way that he starts off his verse. He's such a great rapper. He really is. And again, Stove God Cooks, if you are somehow watching this review right now, we are asking for that solo album. I want to hear that solo album. Absolutely. But yeah, Stove God Cooks definitely had the best feature on the album. Is that safe to say?
Stove God Cooks, yeah. Yeah, I would give it to Stove God. I think so.
All right, how about Buffalo Kitchen?
Or Conway. But yeah, let's talk about Buffalo Kitchen first. You had Armani Caesar on there. She provides a hook that then bleeds into the verse, which felt like one long verse to me, to be honest with you. It was cool.
It was a cool verse from her. Yeah, it was standard.
Yeah.
Sounded aggressive on it as well. Cool bars throughout that.
I feel like a lot of the features on this album just like
cruise by.
They cruised by. They did what they had to do. It was like another day at the office for them, for the most part.
As long as there was no bad features.
Yeah, there wasn't too many weak features. I mean, I didn't love Babyface Ray on Pillow Talk and Slander just because I felt like he came in with like this monotone cadence, which he typically does, but it just felt like a depressing kind of tone, and it just didn't match the production too well for me.
Even for Jadakiss's verse on the third verse,
lyrically it's impressive, bro. Come on, you cannot slander that.
Bro, just because he's Jadakiss, come on.
I'm
reading it right now,
bro. He's literally rapping about like the guys that you grew up with the sandbox, like. Those are the ones to be careful for when it comes to jealousy and wanting in your pockets. Like, no,
it's not
like in terms of like street talk and like sort of spitting game, there's a lot of value there. Like that was a standout verse.
You could say when Jadakiss delivered a standard verse. How many verses? This is a standard verse.
This is a great verse. This is one of the best features on the album.
It's a good verse. I'm not saying it's a bad one, but just because it says Jadakiss on the feature title,
here.
But I know you though. Like if this was any other rapper, you would have said, "Oh, well, it's just standard." Like that's what I'm saying. Just because it's Jadakiss, it doesn't mean that it's crazy. Go through the verse. I have it right here.
I did.
I have it right here. There is nothing crazy about this verse here. At least
there's great writing throughout the verse.
He's talking about jealousy and like his friends that he grew up with, like kind of resenting him and watching his pockets. Okay, that's the basis of the verse.
It's a great verse.
But let's keep going on with
this. Let's talk about not Polar Express, Griselda Express, which is the type of song that you always want to see on any Griselda album, where you have Benny the Butcher, West Side Gun, and Conway the Machine, this time with the addition of Rick Hyde. But I want to talk about West Side Gun because I feel like his vocals weren't mixed right. I don't know if you got the same vibe, but it felt like it was really low quality in terms of the way the other vocals were mixed. Almost as if like he recorded it on an iPhone or something and then just sent it in a day before it came out. Like it just sounded a bit low quality to me. Rick Hyde had a great performance. Loved the quotables. Loved the mic presence from him.
This is all Conway though.
This is Conway's song. Yeah,
pulled the McLaren blue and orange out, leaves the doors open. It looked like Pat Ewing getting his warm up. Crazy shit here. Yeah, crazy shit all the way through.
Snapped.
Yeah, he absolutely snapped throughout. But I mean, like, it's Conway. What do you expect? He usually has the best part of every single like posse cut that they do.
Oftentimes he does. Let's talk about Peasy on Big Timers.
Cool verse.
Yeah, another standard verse, and like that's kind of the sentiment with the features on this album. They were good. Good rating.
I give it a good rating as well.
Yeah, no one really.
No J. Cole, on Johnny P's Cat.
Yeah, you didn't get any of those. That's
you
sure.
didn't get any of those. But okay, let's keep going on with this. Let's talk about the production. So, the production was actually a standout for me on this album because you see, probably Benny's two best collaborators as far as producers go, with The Alchemist and Hit Boy coming together for this entire album. It's really nice to see them come together and offer something different and unique for the soundscape. So one note that I had for it is that I felt like there was not really any blemishes on the mixing and mastering for the most part, maybe on that West Side Gun hook, but for the most part, everything was super clean. I love the dark soundscape with also like the soul and R&B samples that ring off throughout the entire album. So that was really cool. Also, it's 12 songs, so I like how there's a sort of duality to the production, but there's like a coherent soundscape to the rest of the track list.
It's sort of you could say it's very similar to It's Almost Dry by Pusha T, where there you had Pharrell and Kanye. Now you have Hit Boy and The Alchemist sharing the reins with this one. You know my biggest problem is with the production?
What?
No Griselda tags, bro. I was waiting to hear at least one, like on the Posse cut.
That's true.
I'm like, I want to hear some Griselda tags. I want to get that feeling, you know?
Not only that, but there's sort of a trap influence within the production as well on certain songs. So I think that adds a sort of like nice bounce and energy to the track list in certain areas. I don't think there's a single weak beat on the entire album, if I'm being honest.
There's no poorly produced
there's no poorly produced tracks as well. Yes, certain productions are more interesting than others, but for the most part, everything is pretty consistent. I love the beautiful soul sample switch on Everybody Can't Go. They pitched up the vocals, and just that Hit Boy production absolutely rings through. Then another standout for me on the production was Trust More Valuable Than Love, where you start getting like these different beat switches for every single verse from Uncle Al. That was absolutely masterful.
Best beat.
Yeah, I think it's the best beat on the album. But how about you? Going through this album, what were some standouts for you?
To be honest with you, I feel like with Hit Boy, you got like just the most mundane, regular, triumphant sounding Hit Boy beats. To be honest with you, when I look at like, you know, other productions that he's done in recent time, looking at the KD series, or looking even at Burden of Proof, I feel like this was his weakest crop of beats for an album. Even though, like I said, there's no weak beats. They're just, this one felt like maybe it was a bit like lower effort from him in terms of no samples, really
maybe
standing
it's just
out.
that you've been listening to too many Hit Boy beats over the past couple of
Not
years.
really, because I go back to KD 2 and 3, and I'm still enjoying those
that
productions.
surprise of the element is still within those albums, you know, and it's hard to compare those albums to this one. For this album itself,
for this album itself, like I said, the beats felt really standard and a bit uneventful on the Hit Boy side. Alchemist absolutely delivered, as he always does. I love Jermaine's graduation because you get that elegant piano composition with some light strings. That was great for the opener, really set the mood. I also love the production on Braun. You get the big brash horn, some hard-hitting drums, a nice subtle vocal sample, so that was a standout from the Hit Boy side of things. Big Dog, love the eeriness of the synths on that one. That was another standout beat. But yeah, I mean, like I said, nothing that really blew me away. A lot of classic boom bap drums all across. It just kind of felt standard. The same way I feel about the features is how I feel about the production here.
I think it's a great production soundscape.
I'm going to go with good.
I'm going to go with great on the production, especially when you're getting Uncle Al and Hit Boy coming together for an entire soundscape. It's probably going to be one of the better produced gangsta rap albums this year. So my overall thoughts on it. Well, actually, no, let's get into the replay value. By the way, I gave production great. So talking about the replay value with it, listen, I'm a fan of the album. I always go back to Benny the Butcher's projects. The only thing is for me is that, not that I feel like we've gotten this before to a certain extent, but like we've gotten this before. You know, you could go back to a Burden of Proof. You could go back to certain things, and I'll probably find myself more on those projects than this one, if I'm being completely honest with you, maybe for future reference. But overall, I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying a couple of different tracks on here. So example, Jermanie's Graduation, Everybody Can't Go, you know, just so many different songs that I'm taking out of
skips?
This. That was another note that I had in my review, was that there's not necessarily a single mediocre song on the album, but it's like there's a lot of songs on here that I wouldn't care back to go to. Example,
yeah, I feel the same.
So like Buffalo Kitchen Club, for example, Pillow Talk and Slander. I'll go back to Griselda Express, maybe. It's just that West Side Gun hook, I don't know, it's a bit weak, and then I'd rather go back to something like War Paint, for example, if I want a really crazy posse cut.
Also, Big Timers. Are you going back to that? I'm not.
No, not necessarily. So that's why I think the replay value for me as a whole is just good. It's good. I'm going to go back to it. I think it was a really solid listen. I'm going to be taking maybe, I don't know, I'd say half of the album, more or less. So
yeah,
I think it's a good replay value. It's not mediocre.
I'm gonna go mid with the replay value, to be honest with you, and like it's for the same reasons as you mentioned. Like, yes, there's no bad tracks on this album, but we've seen Benny have better rapping performances. We've seen him have more stellar storytelling tracks, but with the exception of Trust. Trust,
TMVTL.
yeah, TMVTL, with the exception of that one. I just feel like, especially when it comes to like the gritty street stories, we've gotten much better from the past. So it's like I've heard these versions of Benny songs just executed better in the past. So for that reason, Back Again, Everybody Can Go, One Foot In, Brawn, and of course Trust More Valuable Than Love would be the songs I would be revisiting. So if it's half of the track list, to me that equals out like a mediocre sort of replay value. And to me, it's like my least favorite Benny album up to this point.
All right, so let's get into our overall thoughts. I think Benny did what he had to do. Kind of the same way I feel about the 21 Savage album. It's like didn't necessarily push any boundaries for the artistry or writing wise, kind of similar production, but he played into his strengths. He knew exactly what he had to do for this album, and I think he's going to make the fans happy with this. Overall, I think it's a great album. I'm going to go through it. The writing is great. I'm going to be revisiting maybe half of the track list, like you said, but the reason why I did bump it up to a good is that, you could play this from start to finish, and you're not going to find a single bad track on here. I've given mediocre ratings on replay values to albums that have a bunch of skips that you absolutely can't go back to, and this is not the case with this album. So overall, great rating on my end.
For me, the way that I feel about this album, it's definitely Benny the Butcher playing to his strengths, like you said. I also feel like this is Benny the Butcher's safest album to date in terms of, working with two producers that he's been known to work with over time. To be honest, personally, I would have liked to have seen some Derringer or some producers he's never worked with before. I think that would have been cool to hear, especially for a Def Jam debut, an album that's supposed to be grand and sort of a homecoming. I do like the fact that he didn't pander to the masses. He didn't try to over commercialize the sound of the album. I like that he really stayed true to who he is as an artist. But yeah, even in terms of like the types of guests he brought on, it just felt too safe and a bit predictable for me as a listen. But that being said, he delivered for the most part. He gave you strong performances. He gave you really solid writing. So I'm going to go with a good rating. And yeah, guys, listen, let us know how you feel about the album in the comments. Do you agree with our scores? Do you have a different score? And as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, we're going to be doing more album reviews all year long. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.